Reach for the Stars, a 5th edition D&D adventure from the Keys from the Golden Vault campaign book or series of adventures. Like many of the adventures in this book, this adventure could be part of a larger story using the Golden Keys method, which is presented in the book, or it could be a simple one-shot adventure that ties into another campaign. Many of the adventures in that book could easily tie into various campaigns. They were sort of designed like that. This particular adventure can fit into almost any campaign. It essentially deals with the player characters being sent, one way or another, to Delphi Manor to recover a non magical text of great value called the Celestial Codex, and to try to figure out what is happening to a individual named Marcos Delphi, who has become twisted by an entity called Krakomar. That name might seem familiar if you've seen one of my D&D adventures that I've put on YouTube for a reason. This adventure has a lot of body horror in it and is vaguely, it has to do with things like Lovecraft and Cthulhu and things like that. It fits that theme very nicely. As you see in the beginning of the adventure, you get some nice images. The artwork in this adventure is fairly good. As you begin, players can either be given a golden key with some information if they want to string these adventures together, or they can meet the sage Vassal Strome, who sends them there to the manor to directly to retrieve the Celestial Codex, or they can be sent by a member of the Delphi family who are concerned about Marcos and find out what's happening at the manor. One way or another, they're going to head to the manor. Now, as you can see by the art, that's one of the first encounters the players have. As they are heading to the manor and on the outskirts, they encounter the bodiless, decapitated head, more of a ghost or a spirit, of Elra Lionheart, who was part of another group of adventurers that has already been sent to this location and who perished. And she tells them essentially where to find her party's camp, which has some supplies in it, as well as a map that they managed to put together of the manor. How they put together this map, the adventure doesn't say, but they did. And the players can use this information to plan a heist or a venture essentially into the manor. As you go further, you can see an image of a golden key. This is if you use the golden key method. I don't recommend it. These adventures in this campaign are better suited for individual adventures in general that are unrelated to each other. Here's the information for meeting Elra. Nice descriptive text. This is the map that can be handed out to the players. It looks rather crude, but that's what it's supposed to look like, and it's even got some nice stains on it, as if a group of adventurers created it. There's also some other basic supplies the players will find at this camp. Eventually, the characters will arrive at the manor itself, and they have some descriptions of basically what the manor looks like and some basic information. I like that they described the ceiling height. A lot of older adventures, they don't do that, and it's kind of a problem. Some information on lighting and doors, windows, and all that. There's also some strange eldritch surges that happen in this adventure in certain locations, which affect, well, it affects things using this little table. There's the map of the adventure itself, the DM's version, as well as the player's version. This map is usable, although if you're using this in an in-person game, these maps would be fine. If you're looking to run it online, there are a few people who have already redrawn this map, and I would recommend one of those versions just because it'll be higher quality. If you did use this version, use the player's version, obviously, so it doesn't give away all the secret doors or anything, and there are some numbers on here. And as you go through the adventure, you get different chambers with different creatures. Most of the creatures are from the Monsters Manual or from adjoining books, and it's things like mimics, Nothic, animated armor, and rug of smothering, flying swords. Here's an image of a Nothic name by the name of Zala Morphus, who was a human mage turned into a Nothic, who is studying the stars. And, do with that as you will. This Nothic, when I ran it, became an interesting NPC more than a hostile threat. which is actually one of the things I like about this adventure is it presents a lot of the encounters more as NPC encounters that could be hostile. So there's role-playing opportunities despite the fact that it is set up more like a dungeon crawl. Also, this individual has a number of scrolls and a spell book and all that that could provide a lot of uses to the player characters. Now, not surprisingly, they use a gibbering mouther as one of the enemies the players can encounter. There's also some psychic gray oozes in different chambers, result of cultists that have devolved. There are some other cultists seen throughout the adventure, including within this image, some of the cultists themselves. This is a good image, by the way, from an illustration perspective. There's this wonderful potion. It's a potion of poison that's been corrupted more so than it ordinarily would be. There is a hook horror in the adventure, sort of, which is its appearance is kind of horrifying, but that's part of the theme. And as you get deeper and deeper into the venture, eventually it goes into a small basement, which leads to the confrontation with Marcus Delphi himself and the remains of two of the other adventurers that previously ventured to the manor. Here's also an illustration of the Celestial Codex itself. As you're looking further, we get to the end of the adventure. Now, what's interesting about this adventure again is that it uses creatures that are normally in the Monsters Manual that kind of fit the theme of Eldritch Horror. The artwork is quite good, and in general, you get a couple of new things. Marcos Delphi has his own stat block, which is nice, and there's a creature called the Fragment of Krokomar, which is a really small worm-like thing. It's a really minor monster in the end, but at least it's something new, which is better than no new things in this adventure. Overall, I think the adventure is fairly good. It has a good mix of creatures and locations within the manor. There's a surprisingly large amount of role playing opportunities. There are, like I said, the one new monster, the Fragment of Krokomar, and Krokomar as an entity has a lot of possibility of being a reoccurring threat. In my Time of Troubles campaign, my players did this adventure, and Krokomar has become a name that has come up again several times. I would recommend using Krokomar in this way and having it be a cosmic horror, which is one of the newer monsters released, and using it as a later threat, having the cult of Krokomar come back, which again I did in a couple of different adventures, and in an adventure I ran taking place in Greyhawk that I put on YouTube. It's a two-parter. But Krokomar would be one of those threats that fully comes into its own many adventures later, and the characters are way higher level. This adventure has that opportunity. The downside to this adventure, I'd say, is it uses the standard manor layout. It's just kind of a rectangular manor. It doesn't get very original with it, and where you could get some interesting side wings of the building, or you could get a better or larger dungeon crawl with just a more interesting layout. And it could have used some additional new creatures that it feels like an opportunity to bring in some new horrific creatures that would have been different, or maybe bring some creatures back from older editions that fit the theme of the adventure that haven't been brought back. And I'm sure there's a few of them. I mean, you could use the Fear, for example, which they kind of merged into the Gibbering Mouther, but there's no reason why it can't be its own creature. And there's, I'm sure all kinds of other creatures I'm not even thinking about, but I feel like there's some opportunities that were lost there. Now, I'll note, by the way, the adventure it doesn't seem to credit any particular author. There are a number of authors credited in Keys of the Golden Vault, but it doesn't say who wrote what adventure. So I'm not sure who actually wrote it, but there is artwork from a number of different artists, which I'll give credit to, such as Robson Michelle, Irina Nordzel, Nikki Dawes, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Francesca Barald, and Scott Murphy. One of the better parts of the adventure, again, is fantastic artwork. I mean, I use the Celestial Codex image, for example. This is great. I come from an illustration background, so this is something I kind of noticed pretty well. Like, for example, this potion, quite simple, but a very effective handout, and just great illustration work in general. Overall, I would rate this adventure a 3.5. Again, it's fairly easy to bring into your D&D campaign. You can fit it either out in the countryside, or you could easily squeeze it into a city adventure. It's not a fantastic adventure. It's somewhat original, but it's good enough. It would make a decent adventure for a third level party that just in the middle of a campaign.